Welcome to the Yoga Energy with Katie podcast. I'm your host, Katie O'Byrne. I'm a yoga and Reiki teacher and I am obsessed with learning. I can't wait to share with you some of the things that we learn here on this podcast. So stay tuned for some weird and wonderful conversations. Hello and welcome to episode 5. I am so grateful for you for pressing play today. It's kind of a strange concept that I'm sitting here talking into a microphone. It's being recorded, and you, whoever you are, somewhere in the world, press play on a device, and my voice is now in your ears. Isn't that strange? But it's also amazing, and I'm very, very grateful that you're taking the time to listen to this because I really enjoy making these podcast episodes. Genuinely, it's a real privilege to get to sit with people for like an hour and to have an hour of their time and for them to give me their perspective on things, to share their stories. It's a really beautiful thing. And yes, it would be lovely to do anyway, but to get to share it with you is also another privilege because I know I get so much from what all the different people that I've talked to have to share. And I'm really hoping that you do as well. And I have another favour to ask you. So, if you do enjoy or have gotten something for any of these episodes, it would be really helpful if you could press the little notification bell in Spotify or the subscribe to my YouTube channel. This means that more people will be able to listen to the podcast. The podcast might be recommended to some people if you press those buttons. And that means that if you have gotten something from these podcasts, if you have taken any messages or any sense of connection or whatever it is that you get from listening to these, maybe you've learned something, it means that somebody else will get to learn those things too. So, yeah, if you have 2 seconds, go and do that now. But this week, I am speaking to Celine Florence, who's a really good friend of mine. I have been practicing yoga with Celine for quite a while now. I can't remember the first time I went to her class. She was teaching Kundalini Yoga at the time, and I got quite interested in it. And I had gone to a good number of her classes and I thoroughly enjoyed them. She shared Kundalini Yoga in a really beautiful way. And then, probably more so in the last year, she was hosting a Friday morning class, and it was just, I was so relieved to just have this space for myself on a Friday morning because while I do have my own practice at home, it's actually nice. It's really just nice to go and have someone else guide you through a practice. And I learned so much from her as well. So, yeah, thank you, Celine, for being there in that capacity. And yesterday it was really special because I got to visit her new healing cabin. She's named it La Luna, which means the moon in French. And it was lovely to just sit with her in person in this really calm, serene space in her back garden. We chatted for ages. We definitely could have chatted for longer. And I was really wanted to do this podcast with her because we do energy healings on one another and we meet up maybe once a month and we always have these gorgeous conversations. And every time we have these conversations, I'm thinking, oh my God, this would make a really good podcast episode because she has so much wisdom to share and a really kind, compassionate, loving outlook on life. And I'm sure you'll hear that in this week's episode. So I won't spend too long in the introduction. I just want to let you know that I am continuing with my online classes. Things are going to be different now for the next couple of weeks during the summer. I have one more in-person class on Monday, the 1st of July in Raheny. So there's one more opportunity before the end of the summer to join me in person. And then from July 15th, which is a Monday, I will be doing online classes at 7 p.m. Irish time. So I would love you to join me online over the summer if you get a chance. And then I'll be going back to my regular schedule from the end of August. So in August, September, you'll see lots more classes. I'll also be adding lots of workshops in the autumn. There'll be lots of workshop for beginners, and I will be helping current students go a bit deeper into their practices as well. So let's get into this week's episode. I really hope you enjoy. I'm sure you're going to love this week's episode, and thank you. I'll talk to you at the end of the podcast. Hi, Celine. Welcome to the podcast, and thanks for having me in your gorgeous cabin.
Oh my God, I can't believe you're here. Thank you so much.
This is so nice because this series I've been talking to people online, so this is really cool to have it in person, like, and just actually talk to someone in real life. And then in this lovely space as well. I'm so happy to be here because it's just so perfect. Everything about it is just like calm and so you, and all your little touches on it, and we just had a lovely healing together, and I feel we both got a healing from it. So yeah, thanks for having me here and doing this.
Well, thank you so much for coming. I'm actually just I'm feeling a little bit emotional now, to be honest, because I've only just opened, the space 2 weeks ago, and for you to come this morning and to give me a healing on the plinth was so incredibly special. And then to be able to sit, well, I am touching you, and have this little chat now. Yeah. So I'm not sure exactly what's going to come through, but I'm just going to trust whatever.
Well, yeah, we should have been recording 20 minutes ago because we've already chatted about really good stuff. But yeah, there was a few things that I did want to talk to you about. I mean, we always have these good conversations anyway. So me and Celine have this kind of Reiki or energy exchange where she comes to my house and does a healing for me, and then I come here, or vice versa. We do healings for each other basically, and we always have a little chat. And if we recorded it, I think if we recorded every chat we had, it would have made a good podcast. So this is good now to have it all on record. And then, because I have been attending your yoga classes as well for the last couple of years, really, because I was going to you when you were doing the Kundalini as well. So there's loads of stuff around that I want to talk to you about. And I think, let's start there, because we were talking earlier about how, like, you've been practicing yoga for more than 20 years.
Yes.
So what kind of style was that? Because Kundalini came to you later.
Yes.
So what brought you to yoga, or how did it start, or what?
God, yeah. So I started just going to like a local class in my 20s, and I travelled a good bit. I travelled for like 5 years in my early 20s, and would have just dropped into kind of yoga classes in different countries that I was in, and just always loved the practice. But it was definitely like 10 years in, like I think it was in my early 30s when I had my very first experience with yoga. It was actually with Maggie Dunn in Malahide, who I love her as a yoga teacher, where I had like a second of space in my thinking. Like I remember being in Shavasana and saying to my friends afterwards, like, do you ever not think? And they were like, no. I was there. Well, and today in yoga class, I had a pocket of space where I didn't think for about a minute, and it was absolutely incredible. They remember them and like, wow, really? Yeah. How was that? Yeah. So yeah, and I know I was just saying to you that like I began having children 14 years ago, and that definitely was like a major kind of shift for me. And I now kind of understand that when we do have a baby, like you do go through a period of metamorphosis and this whole identity shift of who am I, and I didn't have a connection to myself at all before I had children, and then suddenly you're catapulted like to being at home all the time with the baby. And I used to keep myself busy all the time. I was so busy. Like I loved my planning. All my friends used to slag me for having a file of facts, constantly making plans and being busy. And then suddenly I had so much time by myself at home, and realised that I was just like consumed with thinking, and a lot of negative thinking. And I got one of my birthdays after I had Leon, and two of my really good friends, they're twins, actually sent me a gift of a DVD, and it was a DVD from Maya Fines, who was a Kundalini Yoga teacher, and it was on like 2 of the chakras. I think it was on the intuition and the crown chakra. And I didn't have time to actually sit down and do any of the practice, like because she was teaching Kriya, and I didn't understand what Kriya was back then. But I adored the mantra. So she would, cause she's a musician as well. She's from somewhere in Europe, I think maybe Sweden, and beautiful musician. So she would sing mantra, and I would have it on in the house, and it would just bring me a sense of peace that I didn't have. And that kind of went on for like, I would every time, and there was a book that came with it actually, and anytime I had like, I was just feeling really overwhelmed, I used to sit on the couch and read this book around, and it was Kundalini living for regular life or something it was called, and there was like, different recipes in there was different breaths in there, but just even reading the words used to bring me kind of just a sense of peace. And I wasn't even practicing any of the yoga. And and then like I used to work in HR, so I went back to work, and I had 2 more children, and during that whole period, I suppose I just felt like I was like I was trying to find who I was. I was trying to understand like my mind, I remember going on a yoga retreat with Maggie Dunn, and at that yoga retreat she taught a Kriya, which is from the Kundalini Yoga tradition, on the Sunday, and we were doing, I don't know if you remember, frogs from the Kundalini tradition, and we were doing them, and afterwards when I was like in Shavasana, I had this incredible shift, and just this like wave of energy flowing through me that was so blissful and incredible, and just was like, what was that? It was not like any other practice that I'd done before, and sat with her after, and she explained that she had done her teacher training with Jai Qatar, and that the Kundalini Yoga tradition was had only come from India in the last 50 years, and that Jai Qatar had come from America or Canada actually, and was the only Kundalini Yoga teacher in Ireland teaching the tradition. So that kind of stored, in my memory bank, and I continued to go back to work, and I actually was also like retraining in like different healing modalities. So I started doing bioenergy healing, and and at the same time I was in work, and I just wasn't in a good place in work. I found, working 5 days a week, having 3 children, in an environment where I felt like I actually became softer each time I had a child, and that I would go in and I tried to put on this armor of like, okay, I'm going to be here and I'm going to be able to, be a little bit tough, and that's been my kind of mantra my whole life, like Celine, toughen up. And every time I had a baby, I felt like that layer of like trying to toughen up kind of fell away, and I was softer. And I found it just really challenging. Now I wish I could nearly go back a little bit with the tools that I have now, and go back, now.
I was going to ask you, like, do you think, because I think it is really interesting how I think there is a shift in like the corporate world, where people are starting to realize where it doesn't have to be this like masculine dominant energy in the workspace all the time, and actually we do need to bring more balance in. And it's interesting what you're doing with your corporate work, like you're bringing some of your yoga and your different practices into the corporate world, which is in a way you bring in the softness into the corporate world. I know, but just in a different role,
in a different way. And I just didn't have the confidence, and I suppose it's not really modelled, like there is very few female leaders in business, and masculine male leaders, because it's a feminine energy.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think because people talk about like, oh, there should be more women in power and stuff, and I'm like, it doesn't matter who's in power, it's the feminine energy needs to come through, because there was the likes of, say, like Maggie Thatcher in power. I know. We don't need her energy. She had a masculine energy about her.
I know.
And we need a softer feminine energy in more corporate positions, in politics, in different roles like that, where it's more traditionally masculine and linear.
And but it's the expression of like how these energies can play out, because there can be an unhealthy expression of both masculine and feminine energy, you know, and there can be, you know, it's like the healthy expression. So like the unhealthy expression of the masculine is this control and dominance and wear this armor and suit, and that's what I thought was needed, and that's why I was suffocating and felt like that I didn't know who I was, because I didn't have this connection to my core, and I just had to feel like I had to put on this suit every day, you know, and it was really, so I cried. I came home most days and just cried my eyes out. So it came to a point where I was like, I'm going to actually have a nervous breakdown, because my nervous system is so like just frazzled from pretending, or I'm going to have to make this decision to leave corporate. And I had 3 young children, and you know, and it was easier to say I want to be at home with the children, you know, and I did want to be there for my boys, you know, and I didn't want to like go to work in a place where I didn't feel like I was able to be myself, and then come home absolutely shattered, you know. But I didn't know what else to do, you know, and it is really challenging when, you know, we, you know, because there's so much around, like even our finances and how are we going to like take care of like the mortgage and the bills, and something incredible happened around the time that I decided to leave corporate as well. Like we found out that we had overpaid our mortgage for like a 10-year period. And at the time, like I'd asked for a sign, please send me a sign that I'm making the right decision, and then we got this letter, and that actually was like a major, like, you know, cushion, I suppose, to be able to say, okay, let's just take a little bit of space. I need to have some space to see what's next.
When you said that you asked for a sign, like, so did you have like this spiritual practice where you would kind of sit down and meditate and like ask for a sign, or was it more kind of like prayer, or was it like you were kind of just in the midst of it, like begging for like, oh, give me a sign? So like, you know, what was it?
Yeah, a little bit of all of that actually, because what happened was I made the decision to leave in the November of 2017, and 2 days later there was a Kundalini Yoga workshop with Jai Guitar, that teacher who was the only teacher in Ireland, and went to that and like just felt so at home. Like it was incredible workshop, and found out there was a teacher training happening in 2 months' time in the January, and said, okay, I'm going to do that teacher training. I'm going to take some space. Didn't have, you know, a regular meditation practice, had only ever been to like, you know, classes myself or like retreats myself, but didn't have anything in between those sessions, and was filled with fear, going, I've been 15 years in a career, and you know, and now I've just left it all behind, and what am I doing? And it was 3 months into like me starting on that yoga teacher training course, and trying to get up every morning and do a practice, and not knowing what I was doing, and sometimes having experience, sometimes having like zero experience, and there was a lot of fear. And I remember it was in my sitting room, and it was a moment of I was like begging, actually. I was like, please send me a sign that I like, that this, I'm getting emotional. And I got 2 signs. It was really incredible, actually. The first, like, that actually blew me away more so than the check that came in from the mortgage was, I went to my local shopping centre, the Pavilions, and I was like doing a shop with my little boy. He was only 1 at the time, and I went into the like Nourish, you know, or you know, the health food store. Yeah. And my bioenergy teacher was there, and I hadn't seen her since I'd done the training, and so we had a chat, and she was just asking me what I was doing, and I was like, I've just left my job, and that was whatever. And then I left the shop, turned the corner, and I bumped into my coaching teacher. So when I first had my first child, I'd done a coaching training, and that's when I first understood about my mind and how unhealthy all my beliefs were. Hadn't seen her like in 7 years, and I bumped into her in the Pavilions. And then I turned the corner and I bumped into my pregnancy yoga teacher. So I bumped into my healing teacher, my coaching teacher, and my yoga teacher in the local shopping centre. Yeah. You know, in a half an hour. Like I was there, like that is like such a sign that like I've, you know, like this was the right thing for me to do at this moment in my life. And then a week later, we got a note from KBC to say, and I know a lot of people, like, they were on the tracker more. We should have been on the tracker, and that's what happened with us. So that just gave me a chance to breathe and to allow myself to trust. And I know that doesn't happen, for people, but also I believe that we're so busy in our lives that we don't pick up on things as signs from from spirit or from the universe, that it was definitely a on my knees moment.
No, I just found it interesting because you said it was before kind of a lot of your trainings, and like maybe it's a perception that some people have that you have to have this like spiritual practice or something to receive signs or to be in tune to what the universe is telling you, but like sometimes you just need to, like, it sounds that maybe you were kind of in this moment of surrender, that you just like almost give up kind of thing, like, I just at the end of your tether kind of thing, and not that you need to be in that place either, but so before you get to the end of your tether, it's like maybe just open up and ask and have a sense of trust. So you don't have to have these practices, but they definitely help because they help us to become more in tune.
But I didn't have that back then at all. Like, I know what it's like now to feel like this connection from like receiving wisdom, because it's like it's this loving like voice and energy that comes in. And
do you have a sense of what that is? That's a big question.
It's like all I know is that like what I feel when I feel that connection is like that is available for every single one of us. It's like, it's not me, it's something within us all. And I really feel that that's who we are before we come into this body, and that's who we are when we leave. Like it's connecting with the essence, our soul. And like that card that you pulled for me at the end of the session there, is like I was in that, and it was in that absolute just connection with just the infinite part of ourselves, where you're not in your mind, you can't even think. And then like as soon as you start talking again, it just kind of come back into your everyday. And we need to be in the everyday, it's like that's what we're here for. But to know that it's everything. It's like
and that once makes me want to go on to Kundalini then, because you were saying about having that connection and stuff, and like people have a big experience with Kundalini generally, like the first couple of times they do it, they're like, wow, what was that? Because it seems much more, I don't want to use the word forceful because that seems like it's negatives in some way, but do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like there's a big push of energy more immediately than other forms of yoga. Does that make sense? And
I suppose like what I want to say is like there's the how I was taught Kundalini and the tradition that I was taught was Kundalini, and then there's my own experience of Kundalini. Like they're kind of two different things, and I'd say most Kundalini yoga teachers would like have something similar, and so how I was taught Kundalini, I'll start with that, was that this was a 5,000-year-old tradition, that it was passed from guru to guru in secrecy, in readiness. It was primarily from male to male, actually. Like most what's called yoga traditions, it was primarily taught for male bodies as well. And there was a real kind of hierarchy and kind of caste system within it. It was based on the person's readiness to receive these kriyas. And if you go to a regular, like a typical yoga class, the teacher decides the sequence and they map out, what based on what would be a good kind of balancing posture for each, based what theme they want to create. Whereas in Kundalini yoga, there's like thousands and thousands of kriyas, and a kriya means like an outcome, that there is and it's a recipe basically that you are given, and you teach the recipe, and you need to teach it exactly as it's given to you. So everything's timed, like all the mudras, which is the hand positions, the breaths, the mantras to use, everything is given as is, and you teach as is. You're like, so there's a huge amount of dogma, and dogma is like rules, I suppose, around the tradition. And there is a way to open a class, and that's with the mantra Ong Namo Guru Dev Namo. How you close the class is with a song, the Long Time Sun, which we heard later was a Celtic actual song.
When I found that out, I was like,
How
that was
is
one of
that?
the first things that kind of made me question Kundalini Yoga,
Yeah.
because it's like this really ancient Indian tradition with this Irish song.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what is that about? But it was brought in the 60s, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Like by
brought
kind
in.
of a few hippies singing that song.
Yeah.
That's what I heard anyway.
And so the guru who brought it from India to America, to like San Francisco and California, his name was Yogi Bhajan, and he brought the tradition because, and this is what the story was that we were told, was that he arrived to California. He saw that a lot of people over there were doing like LSD and different drugs in order to reach different states of consciousness, and he said, okay, this tradition is needed, and I'm going to break the code of secrecy and share this with the masses. And his goal was to train teachers. So that's what his mission, he felt, his dharma, his life purpose was to train teachers in this Kundalini Yoga tradition. And he knew that he was, that this was going to be unethical and against, the whole tradition in India. So that's how we were taught it, and as I was training in it, there was this kind of internal conflict, because I was receiving such I suppose connection with myself through the practices, I'd never experienced before. Like, it does have an incredible power to be able to calm the mind. Yet, even when, so we'd have videos of him. He had long passed. He passed in the 80s, when I trained then, say 20 years after he passed. And his style of teaching was there was talk of different style of teachers. There's Saturn teachers and there's Jupiter teachers. Saturn teachers are much more stronger and forceful, and he was known as a Saturn teacher. Jupiter teachers are more softer, that kind of motherly energy.
Are you a Jupiter teacher?
I was definitely a Jupiter teacher.
Yeah.
And my own teacher, Joy Qatar, was a Jupiter teacher. She was really soft and motherly energy, and taught the practice in such a beautiful way. I have since reflected, if I was doing the teacher training and was with a different style of teacher, I wouldn't have connected with the practice actually at all. Because in his teachings he'd be jeering the people in the crowd, and making really he was definitely, there was homophobic comments, he wasn't inclusive. So I was always had a real discord with the energy of him as a teacher. And then even with you have to wear white if you teach, you have to give up alcohol if you teach. There were so many rules around it. You have to practice it every single day if you teach, or you're not part of the tradition essentially. And this all went against the grain as well, because it was it felt like it was a control, you know. So I kind of just did my own thing anyway, so I didn't do all the things that
because
I was
you never
supposed
really
to do.
wore the white.
Well, I remember
You were always wearing light colours. I
love white anyway. I love bright colours.
Yeah, and you didn't wear the turban.
No, I didn't. Yeah, and the turban, it was said that this actually, because the energy is so powerful, that it did support the cranial structure of the brain, because sometimes with the energy moving, it can cause headaches. Now, I've never actually experienced headaches before.
And have you? Sorry to interrupt you, but have you experienced any negative effects of Kundalini? So for me, coming from a Hatha Yoga tradition, it was always taught to me that Hatha Yoga is preparation for these types of experiences.
Yes.
So that we need to be practicing Hatha Yoga actually first,
Yes.
long before
Yes, yeah.
we move on to any of these
More
more
advanced.
powerful, more advanced.
Yeah.
Because if we look at it traditionally,
Yes.
the types of practices that Kundalini involved are massively advanced
Yes,
practices. Yeah, and that there can be danger around
Yeah.
it. Actually, can be real danger. It can be quite dangerous to activate a Kundalini energy
Yeah.
before we're ready.
Yeah.
So, what is your
So I
take
have,
on that?
yeah. So I've never had like a negative impact with any of the Kriyas myself. I have had like powerful shifts with them, you know. Like so for example, like there's a Kriya called to release anger, you know, and that really did, because as women as well, we can definitely suppress the emotion of anger, and anger came up, and I was really able to understand where that was coming from in my life, how to be with that anger, you know. But I know from other peers who were teaching it, you know, students did have really, you know, strong experiences with it. And what I have really kind of learnt as well is like that I only ever teach like what I practice, and I practice it, you know, a lot before I teach. There's so many different kriyas, and I wouldn't teach like a huge variety of kriyas because I simply just don't resonate with them.
Yeah.
I feel they are too powerful, and like if I practice them myself and I don't feel resonant with them, I won't, you know, I would never teach them. And yeah, like there is ones that can just be like it's not in because I've done like training since on like trauma informed yoga, and I would say it's not like trauma informed as well, but then also like there is elements of it that like there's so much somatic kind of relief in within the tradition as well. So it's
But was any style of yoga trauma informed?
Yeah,
up
I know.
until what, 10 years ago,
no,
or
I know,
less
yeah,
even,
I
you
know,
know? So
yeah, I know, yeah. So that just didn't come into any. Yeah, I totally understand or relate. Yeah. So what was your
sorry,
question?
I knocked you off your your train of thought there. Yeah, no, just to explore the idea that Kundalini is maybe a more advanced practice, and that we're offering it to like anyone on the street. But then saying that, because I didn't know what you said about Yogi Bhajan kind of breaking the tradition because people in the West needed it. And I guess, like, isn't it better to do Kundalini yoga than take drugs for
Yeah.
what you're going through in life? Do you know what I mean? Like, because we do live in this world where we're like looking for an outlet for our emotions, or for the traumas that we're going through, or you know, just life in general. We need support, and some people look to alcohol and drugs for support.
Yeah, I know.
And maybe we're lucky that we do have these practices that we can turn to. So
yeah, and I suppose like that's kind of where I've come, you know, because when it was in 2020 that so just to kind of go back a little bit, because I was I did feel discord with the teachings, and also then what we've oh my god. So what happened then in 2020 was there was a book that was released, and it was called White Bird in a Golden Cage, and then an investigation was launched in relation to that. It was like the Olive Branch investigation, and it was based on Yogi Bhajan, which sexual misconduct claims and also fraudulent businesses that he had created, and it created this big, you know, obviously, you know, well, a massive kind of shift within the community. And so many teachers like kind of walked away completely from it. I stopped teaching it. I didn't want to teach the practice anymore. I didn't want to practice the practice anymore. I like, you know, definitely went on this huge kind of you know, rabbit hole of like reading like so many stories of different people who had been who had lived in the because people who had lived like in the
they had like a
tradition.
type of an ashram in,
Yeah, there was
like,
an ashram
or different
in America.
ashrams, was
Yeah,
it, in America,
and they
yeah.
like did leave their family home, and they, you know, completely separated from normal society, and they practiced it every single day, you know, and there was a lot that was happening, and there was a lot of like lack of transparency, and it was like essentially a cult, you know. And
that was my next question. Was it a cult?
yeah, like it was a cult, definitely, you know. Yeah, and because I think the practices were really powerful and allowed people to experience different states of being, but then there was an element of control, and that was also been kind of managed by the guru, and and people were sending their children away to India in order to receive education in the yogic tradition over there, and there was some of those schools that weren't incredibly safe for the children. So there has been like a huge outpouring, as a result of everything that's happened. And yeah, I did step away completely from it. And
so what was your first reaction like when you heard about that? Because when I had been like I mentioned to you earlier on, I kind of looked at different YouTube videos and different documentaries that were based around Kundalini and other types of cults, and I just found it really interesting. And then one aspect that really struck me was like when people find out that what they have been involved with or their spiritual practice is not all it seems. It seems like it's almost like a type of a breakup, or some sort of almost like a family split or something. Like it seems
deep.
very hurtful.
It is, and it's like you feel like there's a level of, you feel betrayed. There's a grief, especially when you because I stepped away from the practices as well, but I didn't replace it actually with anything. So then there was a void, just confusion, I suppose, as well. What is true, like the kind of what you've been told versus what you experienced, like all of these things are moving around. And like I shared with you before we recorded this, was Uma Dinsmore Tooley. I'm sure you know her, womb yoga, and
the book is Yoni Shakti.
Yoni Shakti, yeah. She had just released her updated version of her book in 2020, and I got it, and that was incredibly supportive actually, because she updated the book because she had sat in women's circles for over 8 years before she updated the book, and heard story after story in loads of different yoga traditions where there was sexual misconduct, where there was they didn't feel safe, where predator behavior, and she had heard all these stories, and she's like, this needs to be published. And she went to her publisher, and her publisher said, no, we're not going to be able to share these stories. And
because
did.
She goes she names
everybody.
names,
names and shames, and it's all in red
very
text.
Surprising in a way, because there's very few people brave enough to do something like that.
I know, and she's incredible force, because she's still now dealing with the repercussions of different yoga institutions coming to sue her for publishing their names. But that was just I just drank it up, because it really then demonstrated it's this idea of patriarchy, or pyramids, where in every single tradition, like the Catholic Church, organizations like what we're just seeing in the world at the moment, it's like if we have this kind of pyramid with somebody on top that we kind of put on a pedestal, the reality is we all have wisdom and knowledge within us, and that when we think that one spiritual tradition has what we're looking for, that's not truth. It's it's been able to find what feels like truth within each of us, whether we have a spiritual practice or not, actually. And to know that this was bigger and wider than the tradition that I had kind of trained in. This was yes, this is what's happening in the world, and then over time I suppose I realized how supportive some of the practices were, and I retrained with Kia Miller. I don't know if you know Kia Miller. She's a yoga teacher in America who has lived and trained in India for many years, and her style of yoga blends loads of different styles together. So Hatha, Vinyasa, Ashtanga, and Kundalini, and she calls it radiant body yoga. And there was I trained with her in 2020 after the whole outpouring had happened and understanding about the Kundalini yoga tradition, and there was we were able to really unpick and understand that what Yogi Bhajan had done was that he had taken the Sikh religion, and joined together with Kriya Yoga, and then like, you know, created his own brand of yoga and called it like this 5,000-year-old tradition, whereas Kia had gone and like you were saying, like had trained with so many different styles of yoga, and it's like we have to go slowly in this, and we have to ground ourselves in practices, you know, before we even. So when I teach Kriya now, I would only put it like towards the end of a class, and it would be kind of a small Kriya, and then like ground people into their bodies first, and then allow them to have like an experience with the Kriya that is very gentle and subtle and soft. So, and really understanding how energy moves in the body, and the most important, you know, like part of ourselves is actually is released from the lower energy centers, you know, and that things can get distorted if we are like practicing too much from the upper chakras, because we can just have nearly an unhealthy dynamic with spirit. It's like to be in our bodies first and foremost, you know. So, but then, like, I truly believe that a lot, like the Kriyas in small ways are really transformative for people, and they're exactly what we need for this time that we're in, you know, because they do bring incredible like shifts within the body, and connection to ourselves. So
definitely. And I just think there's something, it's not really a question in this, but there's something around just the whole time, and I think before we started recording you mentioned about the mantra, the Satanama, and even just what that represents. It's about life, death, rebirth and
infinity.
So it's a cycle. And I was kind of thinking about how you were connected to the Kundalini practice, and then that kind of died. And you know, was destroyed for you in a way, like and then maybe Yoni Shakti came in for you, and a softer practice seemed to really kind of surround you. But it just really makes me aware of what's happening in the world in general, even in 2020. I mean, there was such a big shift, not just around the pandemic, but in how we were like calling things out. Like, I think 2020 was a massive year for like, no, we're not putting up with this. In terms of like Black Lives Matter was obviously a massive movement, and there was lots of different things where, and obviously Yoni Shakti was relaunched, and Uma called out lots of different people that deserve to be called out. And I don't know, there just seems to be something in that you were in this tradition that dissolved, and then you created something really beautiful out of it. And
like when I reflect back, you know, because we spoke about the grief and the, you know, the confusion, and you know, the like just, you know, the separation that goes along with, you know, something that you believe in. It's like, you know, what happened with the Catholic Church in Ireland, you know, like that was like, you know, a grief, because you know, when the revelations came out about what, you know, the level of distortion, you know, with the priests, and
but I think, sorry to interrupt you again, but maybe it is the same in Kundalini, because maybe there still people still kind of honouring Yogi Bhajan?
There is.
Okay, because I was going to say maybe the Catholic Church is different, because people maybe didn't feel, either they didn't want to disconnect from the Catholic Church, or they didn't feel empowered enough, or they didn't have a way to disconnect in some ways, or call out what was happening, because again, it's only more recently we're really calling out what has been happening in the Catholic Church, whereas for so long it was like people were still blindly following.
And there still is that within the Kundalini tradition. There's definitely a split, you know. There's people who are like still like don't want to believe like the investigation, and are so kind of clung on to and then there's others who have done their own thing. But I feel it's like it was an actual gift, and it broke then that structure of, you know, of following blindly, you know, and allowed like creative kind of flow to come through, to go, okay, what actually resonates, and you know, like that whole like take what resonates and leave the rest, and we're always growing, and it just gave permission, you know. And I already took that permission myself anyway, but in a much greater way, you know.
But I love that I took that permission, and I think maybe that's something I heard in Red School as well. Like, I think it's about taking your own authority.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to be given authority for a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
You just take it.
Just take it, and it's like
or own your authority.
And it's like Red School as well. It's like this element of discernment, you know, and discernment is like is that true, what feels resonant, you know, and trusting that, you know, because I was sharing with you, like I was doing something recently with a group of you know, individuals on a leadership team, and you know, and you know, some of them were saying, I feel very cynical actually about these practices, you know, I don't feel like they'll have any benefit, or you know, just, or maybe just don't trust, or and I said, that's brilliant, you know, like we need this healthy dose of cynicism, you know, questioning like, okay, what does this feel for me? What we are missing and lacking so much of is the experience within our bodies as well, you know, so but we want to still have the element of our mind where we can be critical and we can you know, like look at different sides, but also it's like what are we feeling in our body, and it's having the both experiences together, because we can be so used to just being critical and shutting off experiences because we're not letting them in. But can we hold space for both? Can we have an openness to see what things feel like in our body, and also have our critical mind, you know? And that's what was missing then, I think, within like, you know, a system like that's like a cult, you know, the critical mind gets shut off at some level because the experiences are so rich, but we always need to have both parts of ourselves, you know. And what happened then in 2020 was, for me personally, I was actually at a 4-day Kundalini event over in Mallorca, and I went with like a lot of like students who I would have trained with, and they had invited loads of different speakers, like conscious leaders from all over the world, to speak at the event over like the number of days, as well as doing like different practices, and on one of the days we went and we were at a particular kind of cave on the island that had, so it was on ley lines, you know. Ley lines is like so Newgrange is a place that's like, if we meditate, we're more connected, because you know the energy lines in the earth are just so much more potent, and we're able to access kind of deeper levels of connection with the earth and with spirit. And we were doing a meditation which is, you know, within the Kundalini tradition, called Sata Nama, which means life, death, rebirth, infinity. And it is that cycle of life that we all go through: life, death, you know, rebirth, infinity. And I think like that's what's missing as well, this energy from our consciousness, that's like that would explain so much, because we're always striving to be up. So we like, and that's why cyclical kind of awareness is to know that we will always go through those periods of shadow and darkness as well, and that's part of our growth, and it's part of our psyche. It's you know, it's the rhythm of life. Anyway, we were chanting this mantra, and there was, I don't know how many of us like there together in the cave, and I remember I had a cold at the time, so I wasn't able to chant it like the same as everybody else. We were supposed to listen and chant. That was the kind of like and it was to open our kind of capacity to hear. And at one stage then I just had to stop for like, because I was just like, my nose was just too much for me, and the mantra just changed, and it was so clear and vibrating: Sarah Tamar, Sarah Tamar. And I was like, who is Sarah Tamar? Like, oh, like I can't believe like this is just so clear. And then after, when I was saying to, you know, a few of the girls, I was like, did you hear like the mantra change to Sarah Tamar? And they were like, no, we just heard Sarah Satanama. And I was like, who is Sarah Tamar? And they were like, I don't know. And then I went on to Google. God loves Google. And it came up that Sarah Tamar is the child of Jesus and Mary Magdalene, and that she's an ascended master who has just come back to earth at this time, as we move into a new age, and she really helps us to work with our inner child, which is a relationship that each of us, you know, need to be able to really nurture in our lives. And she also helps us to have a deeper connection with our children in our life. And I remember just being like, what does this mean? Why did I hear this? And who, like, it really, I just, you know, when you just don't have any words. And that same trip, one of the speakers was Alexandra Pope and Shani, who wrote Wild Power.
Yeah.
And they stood up on the last day and spoke about the power of our cycle and the different seasons that we go through as women, and the pain that like she would have experienced like through her period, and then like what happens coming through menopause. She's like that our cycle is our tool to help us care for ourselves and know ourselves in such a way that like it not invites, but it empowers us to view menopause in a completely different way. That's our like we arrive then into this, you know, seat in our life of real kind of wisdom and purpose. And I'd never experienced anyone speaking about menopause in that way. Like my own mum had, you know, like it was such a like horrific time for her coming into menopause. And you know, I know there's such conversation about menopause and all the different treatments for it, but there still is like, this is a really hard time of our life, that narrative, whereas this was okay, we actually have a cycle that when we move with it, and like it's a spiritual practice. And I never thought of like our cycle has been a spiritual practice as well. That wasn't a, you know, a meditation or a yoga practice. I suppose it really then.
Or most people look at our cycle as some sort of fertility journey. Yeah. Like when I started doing menstrual cycle work, somebody had told me that their friend said that Katie must be trying to get pregnant. And they're like, no, I don't think she is. She's just really interested in this work. And I'm like, no, for me, it's absolutely nothing to do with my fertility to have a child. It's like that. It's a spiritual work. And it's not even the spiritual work. It's my human work, like how I am in different phases of my cycle. So yeah, I think for a lot of people, it's still just that idea that
it's seen as like we have it in order
it's only relevant if you're going to have a child.
I know. And then it's an inconvenience, obviously, was the narrative that's like,
inconvenience is
like that we have been, you know, kind of sold, I suppose, or conditioned to believe. So and because as well, like as you were sharing earlier around, you know, like the practice of Kundalini or of yoga as well, like it's physical, it's active, whereas this is receptive. This is actually just watching, how am I today? And rather than trying to shift it through a practice, you know, it's like no, I'm actually just going to allow myself to be this way, and know that there is a greater cycle that is like surrounding me and within me, that that, you know, impacts my moods and impacts my energy and my level of, you know, connection to myself and to other people. Like it's rich with juiciness and so that was in 2020, and like that, I can't believe that's 4 years ago. Because I just feel like I've just,
the cycle is moving on.
I definitely immersed myself in like every single, you know, book that I could read around who Mary Magdalene was, and her relationship with Jesus, and so it's just unpacking then what we had been taught within religion, like here in Ireland, and like that their relationship was this like sacred union, and it was a real balancing of those different energies that we spoke about, you know, and that like that she was connected to so many other goddesses, and you know, who'd gone before, like such as Isis back in Egypt, and the oils that I make are from the tradition of the Mirafor as well. And Mirafor is mistress of the oils, and you know, like in all the pictures you see Mary Magdalene like holding the alabaster jar, and you know, and like so she would have prepared Yeshua or Jesus for the resurrection to access his light body. So with these oils, and then there's so much in understanding about who they were, and it was before their time.
Because when you said about she was preparing him for his resurrection, like when you're taught about religion and Jesus, you're just kind of told the highlights. You know, Jesus was born, and then this happened, and then he died, and then he came back, and then, you know, he rose up or whatever. But you never think of those moments of like those personal moments when he was with Mary or even just a friend or any of the apostles or whatever, you know, they would have done mundane things and they would have done rituals and, you know, prepared for different things, and they were obviously spiritual people, you know, who believed in or who connected to divine or God or whatever. So yeah, I've never really thought of them in that daily sense and doing regular things. And I don't know if people think that rituals are regular, but you know, I do. For me it's a normal thing kind of thing. Yeah, so it's lovely to think of it in that sense.
I know, and like what I've like since learned through all my readings is like that, you know, Yeshua, that's what he was christened, would have travelled like to India and worked with loads of different yoga traditions and breath work, and Mary travelled to Egypt, you know, with the with the different priestesses over there to really understand and connect with her womb space and her cycle and the two different, you know, Shiva Shakti energies. So you may hear the rain. It's like
I'm hoping it's just going to be a lovely little background noise in the in the podcast, a therapeutic natural sound.
And that they were deeply connected to these energies, like the Shiva energy is this peace energy, you know, that we receive like typically through yoga and through breath work, and then the Shakti energy is this creative energy that we connect to when we connect with our womb space. And it's like when we connect with that, we really become the expression of who we are. We're not all, and this is the thing about like say Kundalini Yoga, everyone looked the same. There wasn't this freedom to allow Shakti like energy or life force energy to really flow through you and to create what you know, each of us are here to create something different, I believe. So for me, like it was like really understanding this was like kind of was like the root of every single tradition that we have. It's just been like contorted and misinterpreted, and the lines have got blurred, but the basis of every tradition feels like it's coming from.
And do you think a lot of that comes from either the inability or the unwillingness to ask questions and to question what we've been told?
It's so funny because like this is like what Jesus actually says about Mary, that she questions everything, you know, that level of discernment, you know. So I think it's like I think it's different levels of consciousness, like even like, you know, the Yoga Sutras, you know, there's loads of different, you know, sutra books, and they're all kind of different levels of awareness, you know. So like depending on, you know, like how deep your level of awareness is, well then you interpret it with that level of consciousness, you know. And then then there is just like the ego and the you know, like trying to control a message as well. I don't know how much that is part of it as well. But and I suppose it kind of just comes back to what feels true for each of us, you know. And because like especially in Ireland at the moment, there's such a rise of so many different like practices that we can go to, and ceremonies that we can go to, and
and I see, like, I'm conflicted with that as well, because so I suppose my main training is in Hatha Yoga, and my main practices and study is with Hatha Yoga, and that feels like my foundation. But I'm really interested in loads of other things, and like most of the teachings will tell you, or in the traditions, it's like it's learned from guru to student, and to kind of stay with lineages and stay on the one path, because I do think there is a sense we can get confused. And I naturally have that tendency to wander off here, there and everywhere, but that does definitely lead to confusion within me. And I've always found that when I just come back to the simplicity of like some of the first things that I ever learned in Hatha Yoga, like that keeps you grounded and rooted and centered and things like that. But it's lovely to have the freedom to explore different things as well. So it's again about balance maybe, and just trying to find your own way.
And I completely agree, because you know, like I would still have a practice every morning, and like and that would be a little blend of, you know, breath and like a little kriya, and that keeps me, like, it keeps me feeling so strong and centered in myself. And I have definitely explored like different practices, and my menstrual cycle as well just keeps, like, it feels like it's just this connection back to core. But it's discernment as well. It's like, you know, because there's such a array of different things out there for people, and it's okay, what you know, it's different teachers you're going to resonate with and different practices, but it's the simple, you don't need to have big deep, you know, practices either. It's like, it's whatever feels simple, whatever feels true.
But I think it takes you a while to get to that place to realize the simplicity, because I mean, we've both been on that journey of having these big experiences in different practices, whatever it may be. So I don't know if it's the same for you, because like there was a while I'm like constantly trying to, like, air quotes, advance with practices and get to bigger experiences and bigger sensations or whatever. And it's only, I think, through all that, then I realised, you know, it's actually in the simplicity of things. But it's taken me a long time to realise, like, it's actually okay to be, like, have the beginner mindset is, like, really important for me. I just keep going back to the beginning.
And I totally agree. Like, I definitely have gone down that path as well, and, you know, and having a too big experience, you know, and it's not healthy on our nervous systems. Like, the most important, like, system then in our body is our nervous system, and making sure that we are nurturing that with gentle practices, you know, because we all have things within us. We all carry, like, different traumas, you know, and I suppose that's one of the kind of realizations I've really understood over the last number of years is, you know, whether it's big trauma or little trauma. Little trauma is just like little things that happened over, you know, the period of our life, and most of us have this kind of wound of not being seen or heard, you know, and then we can come into a circle, and, you know, and it can feel like we are being seen and we heard, and so much can want to come out, where it's like, you know, having a just a much more gentle approach to our healing, because all of us are on healing journeys, you know. So, like, I personally aren't what's it called, don't gravitate towards any of the big plant medicine ceremonies or anything like that, you know. Like, they feel like too aggressive for me, you know. But again I know that, like, there's people who absolutely think they're incredible, and they're, you know, but it's again, it's just, you know, just tuning in with yourself, you know, what am I able for, you know, and it's in the everyday, it's in the, like, the regular kind of small little practices that
and it's like, because we can often come out from, like, any practice, any yoga class, and, you know, go like, oh, I feel so good, I feel really relaxed, everything feels balanced. But then it's like, okay, are you sleeping well? Is your digestive system working as it should? Like, are you feeling comfortable? Are you able to stay calm when everyone else is not? Like, that's
I know.
They're the moments that tell you if you're doing the right thing.
I know. And it's like, because you speak to this all the time, it's like, so we can have a yoga practice all we want, but how is that translating to, like, how we actually are in our day-to-day lives, you know? And, like, you know, especially, like, when you've got you know, when I've got, like, you know, I have the 3 boys at home, and, like, you know, some days, like, and that's where menstruality then helps as well, because some days I do have much more capacity to, you know, and have that ability to pause, and I can see how the practice kind of really supports. And then other days, like, I don't have any capacity, and that's when the communication comes in, being like, you know, I'm actually at this stage of my cycle where I can't go my shopping, I can't do the you know, the dinner today, I have to lie on the couch, you know, and Brian, my husband, has become, like, so much better at that. So much so that he's telling the neighbours, oh, Celine has her period today.
Brilliant.
You know. But, like, I'm like, this is what's needed. Like, I want my boys to, when they go up and they have, like, you know, if they have, you know, relationships of themselves, that they are more in tune then with the different cycles, and that they know how to rest then as well, that they're not constantly going, you know, that they're like, okay, I am going to have a night off for my training because I just don't have any capacity. I saw this gorgeous quote, and myself and Brian are using it at the moment. It's like, okay, when he comes home from work, or when I come home, it's like, what's your capacity? And he's like, you know, I'm 20%. Well, you know, I'm 50%. Okay, I'll do a little bit more tonight. You know,
that's gorgeous.
Yeah, and it's like, so then you're tuning into what your capacity is, you know, and then you're sharing that, and that's the magic. You know?
That's beautiful, because sometimes I feel like a little bit selfish. So it's really good to check in, because you're just like, well, I need to rest, you know, because, you know, whatever, like, and that's really good. I think, like, I can, like, honor myself in saying that, and like when I need to rest, but also, like, how are the other people in your life? You know, you can't just rest and expect everyone to do all the work, you know.
And like, and this is a thing that actually came up, like, with menstruality. It's like, it can feel very privileged, you know? Can't it? Like,
absolutely.
Go, okay, well, I need this, you know, and so like, and with all of these practices, it's like, you know, having that awareness of, like, how am I actually sounding, and you know, and so, like, this whole conversation could sound, you know, like that as well. So it's like, and more so than ever, then it's like, okay, but how am I then showing up for other people as well as honouring my needs? You know, that it's like, it is this balancing, and it's coming from, you know, a place of that you feel this, you know, it's not coming from a desire to want to please other people, you know, and it's not coming from a place of just not being connected to yourself, you know. So like, having something in your life where you can feel connected to yourself, so you can then support yourself and others.
Absolutely. And come here, we're just at an hour now, but I really want you, if you don't mind, sharing a little bit about your experience in France. Was it last year? Was it the end of last year? This year, was it? Because I just, like, obviously I had been seeing you in the classes once a week, and you were talking a little bit about it, and then so I had some stuff on Instagram, and it just felt like that moment where, you know, things that are in alignment. I was watching you being completely in alignment with your path, and it was just gorgeous to watch. And I know very little about Mary Magdalene, more so because of you. I'm starting to learn more, but it was just like, I totally got what you were saying. You're like, I'm going to a cave in the south of France. I was like, yeah, you are. And it just felt like completely like, this is what you are meant to be doing, like, and it was lovely to watch. So
well, thank you for reflecting that, because I didn't know that you felt that at all, you know. So and I'm sure other people, like, because I know my mum was like, Celine, where are you going? Who are you going with? You know. So yeah, like, there's definitely been different, you know, perceptions, I suppose, of it, and like, and that doesn't matter. I was definitely in the past consumed what other people thought, and I wouldn't have done that. So, you know, scroll back to 2020 to like then January 2024, so 4 years after me developing this relationship of, like, understanding who Mary Magdalene was and what her energy represents, and what I feel her energy represents is that there's a flame, there's an activation, there's cells within each of us, which is our feminine energy that is absolutely igniting at this time, you know. And there's a prophecy around Mary Magdalene that and it's not her, it's an energy. It's like, it's this feminine energy that's connected to the Great Mother, you know, that it's like, at this time in our, you know, in our humanity's history, that this energy will rise in many, and it's not like rising in, you know, it's not her rising, it's an energy that's arising within many, if we're open to it arising.
And it's that collective consciousness type thing, because, like I said, in 2020 there was a shift in people standing up for their beliefs and what was wrong, and I think that's what you mean by this this rise in energy,
and it's rising in so many different ways. It's like, we can see it now, what's happening in Palestine, and even with you know, like what's the girl, like, last week?
Natasha O'Brien.
She's amazing, and you can see the flame and the fire coming through her.
I have so much respect for her, and she's so determined that it's not about her. It's not about her. It's coming through her in this moment, but she is, like, lifted everybody. I'm so emotional talking about her. I'm just so, like, I'm having chills speaking about her, and I don't think she realizes what she's doing for people.
Yeah,
She's
and
amazing.
And this is the thing, because like this energy will come through in so many different ways. So it's not to look saying, but I'm not doing that. It's like, but there's a different way this energy is coming through you, and that might be coming through you in relation to how you are with your child, or how you are with your father, or what you're doing in your work at the moment. It's this flame of, you know, of the feminine, you know, that like has to be there to match like the masculine energy. But what so I knew that after, you know, Jesus had was what's it called, on the cross, he died on the cross,
the crucifixion.
Jeez, I can't even think.
Jesus.
Mary Magdalene was had to go into exile because there was a lot of mistrust about who she was, and it's like, why would Jesus have this relationship with a woman? Because it was the 12 apostles, she was the 13th apostle, but the rest of the apostles didn't value her. There was a couple who did, and she went into exile. Her Bible was buried and was only found in Egypt in like at the turn of the 19th century or the 20th century, so the late 1800s, and shares like all around how we can access our truth by going into our heart. And it's such simple, it's 3 breaths into the heart. So when we were talking about simplicity, like that's what her message is. It's not about going to church and, you know, being forgiven for our sins. Like sin is another word for just simply forgetting who we are and forgetting to connect in with our heart. So she went into exile on a boat with like her 2 friends who were also Mary and her daughter Sarah Tamar, and arrived at the south of France and lived her last 30 years in the south of France. They arrived into this little village called Sainte Marie de la Mer, and so I went over there with Sue, who was my restorative teacher, and we arrived into Sainte Marie de la Mer, and it was just incredible, like the local town, like how much they honoured the 3 Marys. It wasn't just Mary Magdalene, it was like Mary Salome and Mary Jacob, and their bones and their relics were like found in the church, and there's a little display of them, and Sarah Tamar. And then there's like there's, I suppose, different kind of belief systems about who Sarah Tamar was. Like one belief system is that she was a Roman gypsy, and the Roman gypsy community took her on as their patron saint because she represents those who were oppressed and marginalised from society, and that's what the Roman gypsy community were. And then Mary Magdalene would have went and travelled all around that region, sharing her teachings, like the teachings of love, and she spent a lot of time then like up in the region of Saint Baume, which is this beautiful mountainous region, like a few hours drive from Sainte Marie de la Mer, and there's a grotto there, and then also there is a cave called the Cave of Eggs, and you know, I had done a lot of research and understanding like what the Cave of Eggs was, and it was, yeah, like it's this portal like that within the mountain within Saint Baume, like that looks like our yoni, and like there's very few people have been in it, you know, who've gone to look for it. The people of like who live in the area, they know where it is and they have been there before, but myself and Sue were like, okay, we're going to try and find it. You could hire a guide for like €1,000, and we're like, we're not hiring a guide to take us there. We're going to see if we can find it. If we're meant to find it, we will find it. And then it was like, you know, if you're ready to find it, you'll find it. So it was all this kind of mystery.
I'm interested to know who this guide is that's charging €1,000.
Yeah, I don't know who he was. So we arrived and we went to the grotto, and the grotto is like, you know, there's loads of kids, like, you know, and it's a pilgrimage site, so like loads of people are hiking up there, and that is incredible. Like really stunning, and like the energy off each of the statues, like it was so powerful. But we were like, we want to go and try and find this cave. So we set off to find it at about 3:00, and all we knew was like, it's right, that's all. And like we were so filled with like, we're going to find it. And in every corner we were expecting this big yoni to appear, but it didn't. And then after 2 hours, like we kind of started to realize, okay, we may not, you know, be able to find this. The sun was going to be setting in an hour. We were like, you know, up in this big mountain on our own. We hadn't seen anybody other than a couple who we'd asked, and so then I was like, Sue, we're going to have to go back. So we were walking back, and then I saw like a guy in the distance, and I went over to him and I was like, you know, did you know the Cave of Eggs? And he just goes, shh. And I was like, I just looked over and goes, the goats. And he just looked over, and there was like all these goats like walking over the hill, and you know, I was like, oh my God, this man is incredible. He was so just in like, you know, the moment of like, look at these goats, like, and I was like, where's the cave? You know. And then Sue came over and he just goes, yes, I'll take you to the cave. And we were like, okay. So we stood with him like watching the goats, like I don't know, for 20 minutes, and just whoa. And then he just was like, okay, let's go, and just had his walking stick and like just hiked. And say we were up here in the mountain and we were walking that way, he went backwards and then down, so we were on a completely wrong level. So there was multiple levels on this mountain, and then had to go along this way, so there was no way we were going to find it by ourselves. And then all of a sudden like it appeared, and like just took a breath, massive, like huge, and like the beautiful like shape of the clitoris, and then the opening of the womb space, you know. And I said to him, like, will you come in? He was like, yeah, why not? I haven't been in about 20 years, you know, because the locals would just go there. And I since found out then that like the druids of this mountainous area, like that this was like their sacred portal to connect with feminine energy for like 4,000 years before Mary Magdalene even arrived, you know. And then when we came in, like I just like felt this overwhelming like sense of, I was just like this, come into communion with me, and I was like sat down on a rock, and it was just like my crown opened and just light just like showered down, like absolute peace, like stunning, you know. I was just sitting there like, and then he came down and he was like, he's like, ladies, I'm gonna have to go, like I can't stay. And then Sue was like, Celine, we don't know how to get out of here, you know, we better go with him. And he was like, is it okay, come on? And so then we're like, we'll come back tomorrow, because we still had another day, because it was really quick. And like and Sue was like, you know, I didn't feel that we got to actually be there, you know. So we took pictures all on the way down of rocks and trees, and and then it was like the next day, 8 o'clock in the morning, got up and hiked back up. And went in and like had like a couple of hours there, like praying for like so much, like, and just like the energy in there, and like the second time I was there, I had this experience with Shakti energy, actually, you know, that just like, which is like this electrifying, you know, like source energy that came up from the cave, and it was just pure joy, like just bawling, crying, you know. And yeah, it was like, I'm still processing, I suppose, what happened, because it was really energetic, you know. It was just this like, there's so much, like there's so much happening like in the world at the moment, and there's so much that we can tap into to allow each of us to, I don't know, like and yeah, and like even like for weeks after, it was like, what was that, you know, what was that, like. And I just feel incredibly lucky, and it even feels strange putting words on it, you know, when when something is just, it just makes you realize how much power there is in the earth, you know, and how much there is for us to experience and to know that is beyond our mind, you know. So that's
it's such a beautiful story, like it, just the way you tell it and everything, you can feel the emotion that you felt when you were there. Like it's really,
I was really interested
gorgeous.
Because we went down to then St. Maxim, which is the town where, like at the base of the village of the mountain, and there's the church there, and then Mary's skull, actually, a golden skull, is down in the crypt downstairs. And we went down like the following day, or was it the next afternoon? Yeah, it was that actually, the same afternoon. And as soon as I kind of walked down, like it just, like, again, just coming in around me was like, I'm not here, like it was like, I'm in the wind, I'm in the, and it was like, you know, so it was, you know. And again, it's just this like knowing that it's like, even though I did feel like such an incredible connection to the cave, but it's still everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, and we don't need.
It's just maybe easier to feel in certain places, or it's like a stronger.
Yeah, there is definitely, because it's this kind of ley line energy. Like there's a pulse, you know, that happens, and that opens then when we like kind of connect in. But also then it's like, but then once we, but then to know that it is everywhere as well. So yeah.
Wow. No, it's a fabulous story. You're really, it seems you're really, I don't want to say lucky, like you followed what you were meant to do. You were meant to be there at a time. You were meant to have that experience, and like you've really brought it back, because you've brought it back into your classes, you've brought it back into your healings, and I can feel it off you every time I'm around you. You just have this presence with you, this like faith or something, this belief that everything's okay. But we are pushing on to an hour and 15 now. So but before we finish up, I want you to tell everyone about your gorgeous new space, and then anything else that you have coming up as well, and maybe where people can find you and how they can connect with you and how they can learn more from you, because you've so much to teach, and you teach it in such a beautiful way. I can't wait for you to start doing your yoga classes again.
Thank you so much. I know, I can't believe I'm actually sitting here. I'm in my back garden, like in a, you know, a really regular housing estate, and a tiny back garden, and I suppose for the last number of years I've always dreamed about putting something in the garden, but like hoping that we may move house and have something a little bit bigger, and didn't think I could do something. And me and my husband have been on quite the journey ourselves, you know, just, you know, as we grow as individuals, relationships obviously, you know, kind of grow as a result as well. And we were just decided then this year to invest in putting a healing cabin into the garden, and I've painted it like French white with these gorgeous beams, and to be able to get all my little bits that I've gathered over the years, you know, like and have a little home for everything. I'm actually looking up at this Sarah Tamar candle from and then this beautiful shell that like looks like Mother Mary and also looks like our yoni. It's like all these little connections of everything, you know, to bring it all into the one space. And I have called it La Lune, which means the moon in French. And I opened the doors last week, and I can't believe that I've like, it feels like it's just like this physical form of like something that I can tactile and touch, and invite people in to feel their lightness, to feel who they are at the core of their being, you know. And that's my dream, like it's to allow people to that's not the wrong word, like to hold space that people can feel who they are, you know. And I don't have this big grand plan for what I'm going to do with it. Like my boys are just about to go on like school holidays, so I definitely want to have like small restorative sessions here, you know, intimate little ceremonies as well as one-to-ones. But I don't have like a big schedule of events or anything. Like my next thing that I'm doing is with Sue Flam. We're hosting a retreat in September, which is going to be incredibly special, because Sue brings...
That's in Mulvara, is it?
It's in Mulvara. You've been there.
So beautiful down there.
Yeah.
It is incredible, and the river is like, it's gorgeous.
I can't
and
wait.
Tim and Linda are beautiful.
Yeah, they're like a husband and wife who
you're
cook
gonna have
and
an
everything.
amazing time down there. Yeah.
And like just to be able to do restorative and bring in the work that Sue's doing on family constellations, as well as bringing in all this work around, because a lot of this work feels like it's this energy of the mother, of holding, you know, of like allowing us to feel like this sense of love. So that's in the autumn equinox in September, and then I'm just going to allow myself over the next couple of months to dream into what's next. I don't have like an array of things to book on other than that for the moment, but if you want to book in for a session here during the summer, I'd love to.
So where can they find you? On the website or Instagram? Or
Instagram, CelineFlorence.ie, and my website is www.celineflorence.ie. I have the gorgeous Martha doing some updates on that at the moment. And I'm going to be making more of my oils next week as well, and they are incredible.
Oh yes, of course, because I never even mentioned. So me and Celine have been collaborating on. So I have my Anu Rising ritual boxes and the menstrual cycle journal, and then was it before Christmas?
Yes, it was
last year. So we decided to collaborate and have Celine's oils as part of the ritual box, because they're just such a beautiful, like, it's connected like this.
I know.
It's silly not to have them together. So you can really learn how to connect to your cycle through the journal, but also using the teas to just take a moment to reflect and look inwards, and then the oils help you to do that as well, essentially.
And it's like what we were talking about earlier, like simple practices, you know, and having the oil inviting in like the different properties of the rose or the myrtle can just help to kind of bring you into your heart and into your body in such a gorgeous
and the
way,
rose is so powerful. You talked about like the kind of more intense plant medicine practices, like that circle we had in Laura's for the revolution period, and myself and Celine and Laura Canavan Hayes had this beautiful circle, and your part of the circle was guiding us through restorative practice, but then you came around and placed a rose on my heart, and I have never felt more connected to a plant. I'm like, we don't need to ingest them, we don't need to have psychedelic trips. I mean, I'm sure there's wonderful experiences in that, and there's benefits and all the rest, but again, it's not something I connect with. Simply placing a rose on my chest, and you did it in such a nurturing way, and like you held that space for us to just be and experience whatever we were experiencing. So thank you for that, but also just, it's so simple.
I know. I think that's been our thread of messages.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much.
You were saying, well, I have much to talk about, but we could literally keep going. I could talk to you so much, talk to you about everything for a long time. So thank you.
Thank you
for your time.
Thank you so much.
Your wisdom.
Thank you so much, Katie.
So there we go, another episode done and dusted. That was an absolute pleasure to sit and talk to Celine. She is a wonderful teacher, healer, and person, and I really appreciated the time that she took to sit and talk to me, and I really hope that you got something from that episode. I'm sure you enjoyed listening to her as much as I did. Please remember to subscribe to Spotify and YouTube and share the podcast anywhere that you can. I'd be so grateful if you did. Thank you again. Have a gorgeous week, and I'm back next week with another fabulous guest. We will be talking all about Ayurveda and menstrual cycles. I think maybe it's time I consider getting a male onto the podcast. It's quite female dominant, but maybe that's okay too. I wonder who the first man will be. I haven't asked anyone yet, but if you have anyone that you would like to hear on the podcast, or if any suggestions for me, please do get in touch. Send me an email. You can find me on yogaenergywithkatie.com. My email is yogaenergy2016@gmail.com, or Instagram, Facebook, social media is all Yoga Energy with Katie. Okay, have a fabulous week. Thank you so much, guys. Take care.